Jack Finnegan hated Tuesdays. Especially Tuesdays spent cataloging mineral deposits on godforsaken planets at the edge of known space. The Human Exploration Corps didn't exactly advertise mind-numbing boredom in their recruitment holos, but they should have included it somewhere in the fine print. "Peter, how many more samples before we can call it a day?" Jack asked, wiping the sweat from his brow. The twin suns of exoplanet BDR 478, which Jack had unofficially renamed Hell's Armpit, beat down mercilessly. "Approximately 43 more samples required," Jack, the small hovering drone, replied. Peter, planetary intelligence and tactical assistant, was supposed to be the core, latest AI companion model. What the manual failed to mention was that Peter stood for pain in the ass. 43? Are they trying to kill me? Jack groaned, taking a swig from his canteen. Actually, the standard protocol requires 60 samples. I reduced the number based on your fragile human physiology and constant complaining. Jack flipped off the drone. Thanks for your consideration. It had been just 3 decades since humanity had stumbled upon the galactic community. Turns out, we weren't exactly the badasses of the universe we'd imagined ourselves to be in all those sci-fi movies. Most species had been spacefaring for millennia. Some could bend reality. Others could communicate telepathically across light years. Humans. We had smartphones and could make a pretty decent pizza. Not exactly resume highlights in the grand cosmic scheme. But the galaxy needed resources, and humans were remarkably good at finding them, probably because we'd spent most of our history depleting our own planet. So the Human Exploration Chorus was born, sending scouts like Jack to the frontier planets no other species bothered with. "Hey Peter, fill me in again on the local wildlife. Anything I should worry about while I'm digging in this godforsaken dirt?" According to the briefing, BDR 478 has minimal predatory fauna. Nothing that should concern someone of your limited capabilities. Jack was about to retort when his scanner pinged. He frowned at the reading. "That's weird. I'm picking up a non-native biosignature. Something big." "Impossible." Peter hovered closer. "This planet was thoroughly scanned before your deployment." "Well, tell that to whatever's making my scanner." Jack froze as a shadow fell across him. Not the shadow of a cloud or geological formation, but something distinctly biological and massive. "Jack," Peter's voice had dropped an octave, "I believe we may have a situation." Jack turned slowly to face what was casting the shadow, and for the first time in his career as a scout, he wished he'd paid attention during the xenobiology briefings. Standing before him, nearly 3 meters tall and rippling with musculature that would make a bodybuilder weep with envy, was a creature he'd only seen in classified reports. A Ravaxis, the galaxy's apex predator, a species so deadly that entire star systems were quarantined if they were detected. A race so advanced in the art of hunting that they considered recreational killing a cultural cornerstone. "Well," Jack said, trying to keep his voice steady, "this complicates my Tuesday." The Ravaxis towered over Jack, its iridescent scales shifting colors like oil on water. 4 powerful arms ended in claws that could shred titanium. Its elongated head featured multiple eyes arranged in a pattern that gave it near-perfect 360-degree vision, and a mouth filled with teeth that would make a great white shark feel inadequate. "Human," the creature spoke, its voice a rumbling bass that vibrated through Jack's chest. "I am Krath'zor of the Night Hunter clan." Jack nodded slowly. "Jack Finnegan, Human Exploration Corps. Just, collecting some rocks. Don't mind me." He took a careful step backward. Krath'zor's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "You do not appear formidable." "Thanks for noticing." "I work hard at that," Jack replied, mentally calculating the distance to his transport vessel. "Too far. Way too far." "The galaxy speaks of humans with growing respect," Krath'zor continued, circling Jack like a predator evaluating prey, which was exactly what was happening. "They say you are cunning, resourceful, and predictable. Yet I see nothing special. Probably because I skipped leg day." Jack's mouth operated on autopilot while his brain screamed in panic. Look, I'm just a scout. If you're looking for a challenge, I can direct you to some Marines who'd be happy to. You misunderstand, human. I have hunted the spiral-horned beasts of Magrathox. I have defeated the acid dragons of the Valurian Nebula. I seek not a physical challenge but a worthy test of hunting prowess. Jack swallowed hard. And you think hunting me would prove something? I can barely open a jar of pickles without help. Krath'zor's secondary arms pulled something from a pouch, a small holographic projector. It displayed an image of a human defeating a much larger alien in combat. Your kind has developed a reputation. The Xindi Empire refuses to engage human vessels even when they outnumber them 3-1. The Procyon Collective added your homeworld to their extinction too costly list. The Ravaxis deactivated the hologram. And yet, here you stand, seemingly weak and frightened. That's my default state, actually, Jack said, glancing at Peter, who was unusually quiet, and probably calculating their survival chances. Jack hoped the AI was better at math than he was. Krath'zor moved with blinding speed, suddenly appearing directly in front of Jack. One massive claw, gently though gentle for a Ravaxis, still felt like being gripped by a hydraulic press, lifted Jack's chin. Perhaps your weakness is a deception, a trap for the unwary predator. Jack tried not to wet himself. Listen, buddy, what you see is what you get. No deception here. Just a guy doing his job who would really like to continue breathing. Krath'zor's multiple eyes blinked in sequence. We shall see, human. We shall see what you are truly capable of. Peter, Jack whispered to his drone. Please tell me you're recording my final moments so my mum knows I didn't die doing something stupid. Transmitting to Heck headquarters, Peter confirmed. Though technically, getting into this situation could be classified as something stupid. Krath'zor released Jack and stepped back. Your artificial companion amuses me. I will allow it to witness our encounter. That's generous of you, Jack said, rubbing his neck where the Ravaxis had held him. But seriously, I'm not who you're looking for. I'm just a resource scout. All humans say this. Krath'zor's mandibles clicked again. Your humility before the hunt is a known tactic. The prey pretends to be weak until the moment of surprising the predator. No, really, I have studied your species extensively, human Jack Finnegan. Your kind evolved as pursuit predators on a death world. You can sustain physical activity longer than almost any species in the galaxy. Your endurance is legendary. Jack blinked. Have you seen my performance reviews? My supervisor literally wrote gets winded climbing stairs. Your psychological warfare does not affect me, Krath'zor insisted. I know that humans can run for days without rest, but that your bones heal stronger when broken. That you continue fighting even with grievous injuries that would incapacitate other species. I got a paper cut last week and cried for 10 minutes, Jack protested. Krath'zor's head tilted, clearly confused by Jack's continued insistence on his mediocrity. This wasn't following the script of legendary human warriors the Ravaxis had obviously been studying. Perhaps the massive alien finally said, "You require the proper motivation to reveal your true nature." That didn't sound good at all. Jack took another step back, feeling the first genuine spike of fear. Look, can we just agree that you've successfully scared the crap out of me and call it a win for you? I've got rocks to catalogue. You've got whatever it is apex predators do in their free time. I formally challenge you, Jack Finnegan of Earth, to the hunt of honor. Krath'zor's voice had taken on a ceremonial quality that made Jack's stomach sink. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that declining isn't an option. Declining means immediate death. Accepting means a chance at survival. Jack sighed. So much for finishing his mineral survey on time. Peter, he said, get Commander Martinez on the line. Tell her we've got a situation. Already done, the AI replied. And Jack? Jack. Yeah. She doesn't sound happy. Commander Lena Martinez's holographic form flickered above Peter's projector. Even compressed into a 15-centimeter representation, her fury was palpable. Finnegan, how in the 7 rings of Saturn did you manage to encounter a Ravaxis? They're not even supposed to be in this sector. Jack glanced nervously at Krath'zor, who watched the exchange with predatory interest. Would you believe bad luck, man? With your record? Absolutely. Martinez's tiny holographic hands massaged her temples. Is that the Ravaxis right there? Can it hear me? I can hear you perfectly, human commander, Krath'zor rumbled. Your subordinate has been challenged to the hunt of honor. It is a matter of great prestige among my people. Martinez's expression shifted from anger to diplomatic caution. I see. And what exactly does this hunt entail? The prey your scout will be given a head start of 1 planetary rotation. Then I will hunt him. If he survives for 3 rotations or manages to incapacitate me, he wins. If I capture him, I win. And if you win? Martinez asked carefully. Krath'zor's mandibles spread in what might have been a smile. I take his skull as a trophy, of course. Of course, Jack muttered. Because that's not disturbing at all. Martinez's hologram turned to face Jack. Finnegan, step away for a moment. Peter, private channel. Jack moved several paces away, though he doubted it made much difference to the Ravaxis' superior hearing. Finnegan, Martinez's voice came through his earpiece. We've got a diplomatic situation here. The Ravaxis have been making incursions into systems along our border for months. HQ thinks they're testing our responses. So use me as bait? Great plan, Commander, really feeling the love. You don't understand. We can't afford a conflict with the Ravaxis Dominion right now. And according to their customs, refusing a formal challenge is tantamount to a declaration of war. Jack closed his eyes. So I either play tag with Predator over there, or I potentially start an interstellar war. That about sums it up. But there's more. This could be an opportunity. No species has ever defeated a Ravaxis in formal combat. If you could somehow... Commander, have you seen me try to operate the coffee machine in the mess hall? I'm not exactly Rambo material. You're what we've got, Finnegan. And honestly, you're smarter than you pretend to be. Your file says you were top of your class in adaptive problem solving. That was a computer simulation. This is an actual alien killing machine. Listen to me carefully. Martinez's voice hardened. You're authorized to use any means necessary to survive. Protocol 7 Delta is in effect. Jack's eyes widened. Protocol 7 Delta unofficial name. Weird shit authorization was the Hasey's blanket permission to break pretty much every rule in the book if it meant planetary survival or avoiding an interstellar incident. You understand what I'm saying, Finnegan? Yes, ma'am, Jack replied, suddenly much more focused, crystal clear. Good. Peter will assist you. The drone has been uploaded with everything we know about Ravaxis biology and hunting patterns. Which I'm guessing isn't much. More than you'd think. Less than you'd hope. We'll be monitoring. But you're on your own out there. Survive, Finnegan. That's an order. Yes, ma'am. Any other advice? Martinez's voice softened slightly. Remember your training. Humans didn't get to where we are by being the strongest. We got here by being clever, adaptable, and occasionally incredibly stubborn. The private channel clicked off, and Jack returned to where Krath'zor waited patiently. Your commander is wise, the Ravaxis said. She knows the importance of this ritual. This say? No. Oh. Yeah, she's a peach, Jack replied. So, 1 rotation head start, 3 rotations to survive. What are the boundaries? The hunt area is a circle with a radius of 20 of your kilometers from this point. Leave the boundary, and you forfeit. Jack nodded. And what weapons am I allowed? Krath'zor seemed amused by the question. Whatever you carried when we met. Nothing more. Jack looked down at his standard-issue survival knife, sample collection tools, and the small laser cutter used for geological work. Great. He was facing the galaxy's most perfect killing machine with the equivalent of a Swiss Army knife. Your AI companion may accompany you, but it cannot interfere directly in combat, Krath'zor added. How sporting of you, Jack said dryly. When do we start? Now. The Ravaxis pointed to the horizon where the first of the twin suns was beginning to set. When both suns have risen again, the hunt begins. I suggest you use your time wisely, human Jack Finnegan. Oh, I intend to, Jack replied, already backing away. Peter, we need to move. Calculating optimal escape routes, the drone responded, hovering close to Jack's shoulder. As they hurried away from the Ravaxis, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that Krath'zor was already enjoying the hunt. Those multiple eyes had watched him with anticipation, like a cat watching a mouse that thought it had a chance to escape. Peter, Jack said once they were out of earshot, access everything we have on Ravaxis hunting techniques. And I mean everything: physiology, psychology, cultural practices. Accessing Human Exploration Core database. Peter confirmed. Jack, your heart rate is elevated, and your cortisol levels suggest extreme stress. No kidding. I've been challenged to mortal combat by a walking nightmare with anger issues and trophy-collecting tendencies. May I suggest a strategy? I'm all ears. Run. Hide. Pray. Jack glared at the drone. That's your advanced AI analysis? I've calculated our survival probability at approximately 2.7%, Peter replied matter-of-factly. Never tell me the odds, Jack muttered, then grinned despite himself. Actually, you know what? Those odds aren't so bad. I fail to see how a 97.3% chance of death is not so bad. Jack's grin widened as they crested a hill, putting more distance between themselves and Krath'zor, because that murder lizard back there thinks he's hunting a helpless human. But what he doesn't know is that I grew up with 3 older brothers who considered Jack hunting a recreational sport. I fail to see how childhood trauma improves our current situation. It means, Jack said, his mind already racing with ideas, that I've spent my entire life learning how to deal with bigger, stronger opponents who underestimate me. And now I've got authorization to fight dirty. At Protocol 7 Delta. Peter acknowledged. Exactly. Now, tell me everything about this planet: terrain features, chemical composition, flora, fauna, weather patterns. The works. Processing request. May I ask what you're planning? Jack's expression hardened with determination. I'm planning to show Krath'zor why humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy, not because we're the strongest, but because we're the most devious. The twin suns of BDR 478 rose over the horizon, bathing the alien landscape in harsh orange light. Jack watched from his carefully selected position atop a rocky outcrop, the culmination of a sleepless night spent in frantic preparation. He's coming, Peter observed unnecessarily as the drone's sensors picked up movement in the distance. Right on schedule, Jack nodded, checking his makeshift equipment one last time. Time to see if this works, or if I'm about to become a very stylish wall decoration in someone's trophy room. The past rotation had been a blur of activity. Jack had used every bit of his scout training, and then some, preparing the terrain, studying Ravaxis' weaknesses, pitifully few, and creating what he hoped were enough surprises to keep him alive. Jack, I've been analyzing Krath'zor's movement patterns. He's being theatrical. What do you mean? He's making no attempt to mask his approach. In fact, based on Ravaxis' hunting documentation, his behavior suggests he's deliberately allowing you to track him. Jack snorted. Psychological warfare. He wants me scared, making mistakes. Is it working? Like a charm, Jack admitted, wiping sweat from his brow. But being terrified doesn't mean being stupid. Let's stick to the plan. That plan, hastily devised during the night, was simple in concept. Avoid direct confrontation at all costs, use the environment to his advantage, and employ every dirty trick in the book to survive. He's approaching the first trap, Peter announced. Through the drone's enhanced visual feed, Jack watched as Krath'zor moved through the landscape with fluid grace that seemed impossible for a creature of its size. The Ravaxis paused, lowering itself to examine something on the ground. He's found your tracks, Peter observed. Right where I wanted them, Jack replied, feeling a glimmer of satisfaction. The footprints led straight toward the carefully prepared ground ahead. Krath'zor followed the trail, moving with greater speed now that he had a clear path to his prey. When he reached the suspicious patch of ground, however, He stopped, and multiple eyes narrowed as he examined the area. After a moment of consideration, the Ravaxis picked up a nearby rock and tossed it onto the suspicious ground. Nothing happened. Damn it, Jack muttered. Too obvious. Krath'zor made that clicking sound with his mandibles, definitely amusement, and deliberately stepped onto the ground Jack had spent hours preparing. The alien knew it was a trap and was showing contempt for his prey's efforts. What the Ravaxis didn't expect was that the obvious trap was merely a decoy. As soon as Krath'zor's weight settled on the seemingly solid ground, the real trap activated. The earth beneath him suddenly gave way, not in a simple pit trap that would have been instantly recognizable to an experienced hunter, but in a more sophisticated collapse that sent the Ravaxis tumbling down a carefully engineered slope, directly into a pocket of the noxious gas Jack had discovered during his mineral survey. The gas wasn't lethal to a Ravaxis. Jack wasn't that lucky, but according to the HC database, it would temporarily disorient their heightened senses. A furious roar echoed across the landscape as Krath'zor thrashed in confusion, multiple arms flailing as his sensory organs tried to recalibrate. "That won't hold him long," Jack said, already moving from his observation point. "But it's a start." "He appears most displeased," Peter observed dryly. "Good. Pissed off means making mistakes." Jack scrambled down the backside of the outcrop. "How long until he recovers?" "Estimated 45 seconds based on known Ravaxis physiology." "Perfect. That gives us time to get to position 2. As they moved through the rocky terrain, Jack could hear Krath'zor's roars transforming from confusion to fury. The game had changed. The Ravaxis had expected an easy hunt against a frightened human, not a prey that fought back. By midday, Jack had led Krath'zor through 3 more traps. Each designed not to kill. Jack wasn't delusional enough to think he could seriously harm a Ravaxis with scout equipment, but to frustrate, disorient, and most importantly, thus to build a false picture of Jack's capabilities and strategy. "He's adapting to your methodology," Peter warned as they watched from hiding as Krath'zor expertly dismantled what would have been Jack's next trap before it could be triggered. "His learning algorithm is impressive." "So is mine," Jack replied with a grim smile. "Notice how he's avoiding any path that looks too clean or too messy now. He thinks he's figured out my approach to trap setting. Isn't he correct?" "He's figured out phase 1. Now we move to phase 2. Jack pulled out his sample collection kit and began rummaging through the contents. "Time to introduce our friend to some good old-fashioned human chemistry." By late afternoon, Krath'zor's hunt had transformed from a confident pursuit into a cautious stalking. The Ravaxis moved with greater care, testing the ground before each step, examining every shadow for signs of ambush. 3 times now, the human had turned the hunter's own environment against him. What Krath'zor couldn't know was that everything so far had been misdirection. Jack wanted the Ravaxis focused on the ground, on physical traps, on the obvious. It was human hunting 101, make your opponent look where you want them to look. From their new hiding spot in a narrow ravine, Jack watched through Peter's feed as Krath'zor discovered the collection of small objects Jack had deliberately left behind: a canteen, a sample bag, and most importantly, footprints leading directly into a box canyon. "Jack," Peter whispered, somehow conveying urgency despite the AI's monotone voice. 3 additional Ravaxis biosignatures detected approaching from orbit." "What?" Jack hissed in surprise. "That wasn't part of the agreement. They appear to be observing only. Their vessel remains in high orbit." Jack frowned. "Spectators? For a hunt?" According to the database, high-ranking Ravaxis often invite witnesses to particularly promising hunts. "It appears you've been deemed worthy of an audience." "Lucky me," Jack muttered, but inside his mind was racing with the implications. If there were witnesses, that meant Krath'zor had something to prove. And if the hunter had something to prove, he might be prone to showing off and making mistakes. Below, Krath'zor had discovered the entrance to the box canyon. The Ravaxis moved with renewed confidence, clearly believing he had finally cornered his elusive prey. "He's taking the bait," Jack whispered. "Get ready." Jack, I calculate a 73.2% probability that he expects an ambush in the canyon. Of course he does. That's the point. Jack waited until Krath'zor had fully committed to entering the canyon before activating the small remote detonator in his hand. There was no explosion, just a subtle shift in the rock face above the canyon entrance as carefully placed geological charges dislodged key support stones. The rock slide wasn't massive, but it didn't need to be. It simply needed to block the entry point long enough for Jack to double back along the hidden path he'd discovered during the night. A roar of frustration echoed through the ravine as Krath'zor realized the trap. The Ravaxis would escape the box canyon easily enough. The rock slide was a delay tactic, not a prison, but by the time he did, Jack would be halfway to his next position. Phase 2 complete. Jack grinned as they hurried along the hidden path. Now comes the fun part. Your definition of fun continues to concern me, Peter replied. As the suns began to set on the first day of the hunt, something unprecedented was happening aboard the Ravaxis observation vessel in orbit. The three high-ranking hunters were engaged in heated debate. The human uses the environment with unexpected skill, the eldest observer noted. Krath'zor's pride blinds him. Yet the human shows no aggression, argued another, he merely delays the inevitable. The third observer, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. Perhaps that is their strategy. Humans are endurance predators. They exhaust their prey. No prey has ever exhausted a Ravaxis hunter, the second observer scoffed. No prey until now, the third countered, mandibles clicking thoughtfully as they watched the human scout disappear into the gathering darkness, leaving a frustrated Krath'zor to claw his way out of the box canyon. The dawn of the third rotation broke over BDR 478, and Jack Finnegan looked like hell. 2 days of being hunted had taken their toll. His uniform was torn and dirty, his face streaked with grime and sweat, and a nasty gash on his forearm served as a reminder of just how close Krath'zor had come to catching him during the night. 6 hours, Jack muttered to himself as he crouched in the shadow of a massive rock formation. Just 6 more hours, and I win by default. That assumes Krath'zor will honor the time limit, Peter responded, hovering close by. The drone had suffered damage as well. One of its stabilizers was malfunctioning, causing it to list slightly to the left. He will, Jack said with more confidence than he felt. Everything we've seen suggests the Ravaxis take their hunting protocols seriously. Perhaps, but Krath'zor has grown increasingly erratic. His last attack pattern was highly irregular compared to documented Ravaxis hunting techniques. Jack nodded grimly. The night had been a nightmare of near misses and desperate escapes. Krath'zor had abandoned the methodical tracking of the first day in favor of aggressive pursuit, nearly catching Jack twice. Only quick thinking and intimate knowledge of the terrain had saved him. He's frustrated, Jack said. Good. Angry hunters make mistakes, and what is our final strategy? Peter inquired. We've exhausted most of our resources, and Krath'zor has adapted to your evasion patterns. Jack's eyes gleamed with determination. We're going to give him exactly what he wants, a direct confrontation. Jack, that is statistically the worst possible. And on our terms, Jack interrupted. In the location I've spent the past 2 days preparing for. The location was a geothermal hotspot Jack had discovered during his initial survey. A series of mud pots and geysers created a natural hazard zone where visibility was poor due to steam vents, and the ground itself was treacherous, perfect for Jack's final stand. He's coming, Peter announced, sensors picking up the approaching Ravaxis. Jack took a deep breath and stepped out into the open, directly in Krath'zor's line of sight. The Ravaxis froze, clearly suspicious of his prey's sudden boldness. Jack could almost see the alien's mind working, assessing the trap that must surely be waiting. "Hey, lizard face," Jack shouted, throwing caution to the winds. 2 days of cat and mouse, and the best you can do is give me a scratch. I thought you were supposed to be the galaxy's top predator. Krath'zor's multiple eyes narrowed, mandibles clicking in what Jack had come to recognize as irritation. You have proven, resourceful, human, the Ravaxis called back, voice carrying easily across the distance. But your tricks and traps merely delay the inevitable. Do they? Jack replied, casually leaning against a rock as if he didn't have a care in the world. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're the one who's tired and frustrated. How's your pride holding up with those observers watching you fail to catch one puny human? That hit a nerve. Krath'zor snarled, a sound that sent involuntary shivers down Jack's spine. Your psychological tactics are as primitive as your species, the Ravaxis growled. I have hunted prey across 12 star systems. I have faced creatures that would make your nightmares seem pleasant. You are nothing. Then, why haven't you caught me yet? Jack taunted, then turned and sprinted toward the geothermal field. With a roar that seemed to shake the very ground, Krath'zor gave chase. Jack ran full tilt toward the field of mud pots and geysers, following the exact path he had meticulously memorized over the past 2 days. Behind him, he could hear Krath'zor gaining ground with each massive stride. The Ravaxis was blindingly fast, far faster than any human could hope to be. But speed wasn't everything. Not when you knew exactly where to step and where not to. As Jack reached the edge of the geothermal field, he began weaving between steam vents and bubbling mud pots, following his mental map with perfect precision. Krath'zor, in his fury, plunged in after him with less caution than he should have shown. The first mistake came when the Ravaxis' foot broke through a thin crust of dried mud, plunging into scalding hot muck beneath. Krath'zor roared in pain but continued the pursuit, now moving with greater care. Peter, now. Jack yelled as he reached a particular formation of rocks. The drone shot forward, activating the small devices Jack had planted throughout the field over the past 2 days. Suddenly, geysers began erupting in an unnatural pattern, not randomly, but in a carefully orchestrated sequence that Jack had engineered by adjusting the pressure points in the geothermal system. Steam billowed everywhere, reducing visibility to near zero. For Jack, who knew exactly where each eruption would occur and when, it was navigable. For Krath'zor, it was chaos. Your vision may be superior, Jack muttered as he ducked behind a rock formation, but it doesn't help if you can't see anything. Through gaps in the steam, Jack caught glimpses of the Ravaxis spinning in confusion, multiple eyes darting in all directions as geysers erupted around him. The hunter had become disoriented in the artificial fog, exactly as Jack had planned. Now came the truly dangerous part of the plan. Jack circled around through the steam, approaching Krath'zor from behind. In his hands, he held his last weapon, a makeshift sling created from parts of his survey equipment. Loaded in the sling was a sample container filled with a caustic mineral compound he'd collected and processed. One shot. He'd get one shot before the Ravaxis located him through the steam. Jack swung the sling, building momentum, then released. The container sailed through the air and shattered against Krath'zor's back, directly on the sensory cluster that Peter had identified as crucial to the Ravaxis' hunting abilities. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Krath'zor howled in agony as the compound burned into his sensory organs, temporarily overloading them with input. The Ravaxis thrashed wildly, all 4 arms flailing in an attempt to remove the burning substance. But Jack wasn't done. As Krath'zor spun blindly, Jack triggered the final trap, a series of thin wires he'd strung between rock formations, nearly invisible, even in good conditions, impossible to see in the steam. The disoriented Ravaxis blundered directly into them. The wires weren't strong enough to truly restrain a creature of Krath'zor's strength, but they didn't need to be. They just needed to tangle and confuse. And as Krath'zor fought against the entangling wires, his thrashing led him exactly where Jack wanted him, onto a patch of seemingly solid ground. There was actually a thin crust over a deep mud pot. The crust gave way beneath the Ravaxis' weight. With a final roar of fury and surprise, Krath'zor plunged waist deep into the thick, viscous mud, not hot enough to cause serious injury, but more than sufficient to trap even a creature of his strength temporarily. Jack emerged from behind his cover, approaching the trapped Ravaxis cautiously. In his hand he held his last resource, the geological laser cutter, modified to its highest setting. Krath'zor ceased struggling when he saw Jack, those multiple eyes fixing on the human with an unreadable alien expression. Well, the Ravaxis finally said, mandibles clicking slowly. It seems the stories of human cunning were not exaggerated after all. No, Jack agreed, holding the laser cutter steady. They weren't. They weren't. You could kill me now, Krath'zor observed. It would be within the rules of the hunt. Jack considered the laser cutter in his hand, then deliberately powered it down and returned it to his belt. I could, he agreed. But that's not really the human way. Explain. Jack circled the trapped Ravaxis, making sure to stay beyond arm's reach. See, humans figured something out early in our evolution. Killing the predator feels good in the moment, but understanding the predator serves you better in the long run. A philosophy at the moment of victory? Krath'zor's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Your species continues to surprise, and not philosophy. Practicality. Jack gestured to the sky where the observation vessel lurked. Those observers up there. They're watching how this plays out. They're learning about humans, just like I've been learning about you. Krath'zor went still, multiple eyes blinking in sequence. You've been studying me? From the moment we met, Jack confirmed. Every reaction, every hunting pattern, every physiological response. Peter's been cataloguing it all. The Ravaxis' mandibles clicked in what might have been grudging respect, while I hunted you. I was hunting you, Jack finished, just not the way you hunt. That's the thing your species hasn't figured out about us yet. Humans aren't apex predators because we're the strongest or fastest. We're apex predators because we understand our prey better than anyone else. So I have been experimented upon. Krath'zor sounded more intrigued than outraged. Jack shrugged. You wanted to learn what makes humans dangerous. Now you know. It's not our physical abilities, it's how we think, how we adapt, how we turn our weaknesses into strengths. And now? Krath'zor asked, still trapped in the mud pot. What does the human way dictate happens to a defeated opponent? Jack smiled tiredly. We offer them a hand up. Well, metaphorically speaking. I'm not actually going to reach down there because, frankly, I think you'd rip my arm off. A wise precaution, Krath'zor acknowledged. The Ravaxis studied Jack with newfound respect. You have defeated me fairly, Jack Finnegan of Earth. By the ancient laws of the hunt, I acknowledge your victory and your species' prowess. With remarkable dignity for someone half buried in mud, Krath'zor bowed his head, a formal gesture of submission that Peter quietly informed Jack was extremely rare among Ravaxis hunters. The hunt of honor is concluded, Krath'zor declared. You may go in peace, human. My clan will remember this day. Jack nodded, the exhaustion of the past 3 days finally catching up to him. So will I, believe me. He took a step back, then paused, out of curiosity. What would you have done if you'd caught me? Krath'zor's mandibles spread in what was definitely the Ravaxis equivalent of a smile. Taken your skull as a trophy, of course. Right. Jack swallowed. Just checking. As he turned to leave, Krath'zor called after him. Jack Finnegan, yeah? Next time we meet, the hunt may go differently. Jack looked back over his shoulder with a wry smile. Maybe. But I'll have new tricks by then. He walked away, leaving the galaxy's most feared predator to extract himself from a mud pit, still contemplating the implications of being outsmarted by what had appeared to be the weakest prey he'd ever encountered. Let me get this straight, Commander Martinez said, leaning forward in her chair as she stared at Jack across the debriefing room table. Her hologram had been replaced by her actual presence aboard the Hexi flagship that had arrived shortly after the conclusion of the hunt. You not only survived a hunt by a Ravaxis warrior, but you actually defeated him. Technically, Jack corrected, wincing as the medical officer applied regenerative gel to the gash on his forearm. I outsmarted him. There's a difference. Martinez shook her head in disbelief. In the 300 years since first contact with the Ravaxis Dominion, no species has ever defeated one of their hunters in formal combat. Not the Zindi with their hive-mind warriors, not the Procyons with their battle mechs, nobody. Well, Jack offered with a modest shrug that was completely undercut by his smug grin. Nobody ever sent a resource scout from Pittsburgh against them before. Admiral Chen, who had arrived with Martinez and had been silently reviewing the data from Jack's mission, finally spoke. "Finnegan, are you aware of what you've accomplished here? Survived by the skin of my teeth, set a new personal record for consecutive hours without sleep, ruined a perfectly good uniform." The Admiral wasn't amused. "You've fundamentally altered humanity's standing in galactic politics." That wiped the grin off Jack's face. "Come again." "The Ravaxis Dominion sent a formal diplomatic communique an hour ago," Martinez explained. "They're requesting a meeting with human representatives to discuss, and I quote, the unexpected evolutionary advantages of the human species and potential areas of mutual cooperation." Jack blinked. "Fair. They want to be friends now. Because I dumped one of their guys in a mud pit." "It's more complex than that," the Admiral said. "The Ravaxis respect strength above all else, but their definition of strength has always been purely physical. Your victory has confused them. They're curious, and in galactic politics," Martinez added, "curiosity is infinitely better than hostility." Jack was still processing this when the medical officer finished treating his wounds and packed up her supplies. As she left, a communications officer entered with a data pad. "Admiral, Commander." The officer said with a crisp salute, "We've received a personal message for Scout Finnegan from the Ravaxis vessel before they entered FTL. They specifically requested it be delivered in private." And Martinez and the Admiral exchanged glances. "Go ahead," Martinez said, nodding to Jack. The communications officer handed Jack the pad and left. Jack activated it, surprised to see Krath'zor's face fill the screen. "Human Jack Finnegan." The Ravaxis began formally. "I record this message as I prepare to return to my clan territories. The observers have reviewed our hunt of honor extensively and have reached conclusions that may interest you." Jack raised an eyebrow, listening intently. "It has been determined that your victory was not mere chance or trickery, as some initially suggested," Krath'zor continued. "Rather, it represents an approach to conflict that the Ravaxis Dominion has historically undervalued. In simple terms, you fought smarter, not stronger." The massive alien shifted uncomfortably before continuing. "The observers have recommended a formal revision to our species' tactical manuals regarding encounters with humans. Previously, your kind was classified as physically inferior, but numerically significant. Your new classification is deceptively dangerous. Approach with extreme caution." Jack couldn't help but smile at that. "I have been tasked with leading a study of human tactical thinking," Krath'zor added, and Jack could have sworn the alien looked almost embarrassed. "It would be valuable if we could continue our exchange of perspectives in a less lethal context." The message ended with the formal Ravaxis farewell gesture, but with a slight modification that Peter quietly informed Jack was a sign of professional respect between warriors. "Well," Jack said, setting down the pad. "That's unexpected." "What did he say?" Martinez asked. Jack grinned. "I think I just made a pen pal." 3 days later, back aboard the Hexy station orbiting Earth, Jack found himself the reluctant center of attention. His mission report had spread throughout the Corps, despite being classified, because nothing stayed secret for long when it was this good. And he couldn't walk down a corridor without receiving congratulatory nods or curious stares. "You know they're calling you Predator Jack now," his friend Miguel informed him as they sat in the mess hall. "There's a rumor going around that you took down a Ravaxis using nothing but a geological survey kit and bad jokes." "The jokes were actually pretty good," Jack protested, under the circumstances. "The brass is going crazy trying to figure out how to leverage this," Miguel continued. "Word is they're developing a whole new training program based on your tactics." Jack snorted. "My tactics? I made it up as I went along and got lucky." "That's not how the Ravaxis see it," said a new voice. Commander Martinez slid into the seat across from Jack, setting down a data pad. "Their diplomatic delegation arrives next week. And guess who they specifically requested as their human liaison?" Jack's fork froze halfway to his mouth. "No, absolutely not. I'm a resource scout, not a diplomat. You're the only human who's ever defeated a Ravaxis in formal combat," Martinez replied. "That makes you uniquely qualified in their eyes. I'm uniquely qualified to find mineral deposits on hellhole planets, not negotiate with alien predators." Martinez smiled. Actually, I think you'll find the skill sets overlap more than you'd expect. Both require understanding your environment, adapting to circumstances, and thinking creatively under pressure. Jack groaned, dropping his head into his hands. I should have let him eat me. Too late now. Predator Jack, Miguel teased. You're a cultural ambassador. Later that evening, as Jack packed for his unexpected reassignment to the diplomatic corps, Peter hovered nearby, projecting statistics about Ravaxis culture and customs. You know. The AI observed. There's a certain irony to this situation. By demonstrating that humans aren't the galaxy's apex physical species, you've elevated humanity's status more than any show of force could have. Jack paused his packing. What do you mean? The Ravaxis and many other species evolved on worlds where physical dominance determined survival. Earth's unique evolutionary pressures created a different kind of predator, one that succeeds through intelligence and adaptability rather than raw strength. So by being the galaxy's weaklings, we're actually its most dangerous species. Jack chuckled. Precisely. As you demonstrated to Krath'zor, physical advantages are temporary. Evolutionary adaptability is forever. Jack considered this as he finished packing. You know, when I joined the Human Exploration Corps, I thought the worst that could happen was death by boredom cataloging rocks. I never imagined I'd end up representing humanity because I dumped an alien in a mud puddle. Life is full of unexpected opportunities, Peter replied sagely. Save the fortune cookie wisdom, Jack said, zipping his bag closed. You're coming with me to this diplomatic summit. If I have to explain to a room full of Ravaxis why humans are worthy of respect, I'll need someone to back me up when I inevitably say something offensive. As always, I live to serve, Peter replied with what Jack swore was sarcasm. 1 week later, Jack stood in the grand reception hall of Earth's galactic embassy, tugging uncomfortably at the formal uniform he'd been issued for the occasion. Before him stood Krath'zor and a delegation of Ravaxis dignitaries, their massive forms making the typically imposing embassy look suddenly small. Welcome to Earth, Jack said formally, as he'd been coached. The Human Exploration Corps and the United Earth Government are honored by your presence. Krath'zor stepped forward, towering over Jack. For a moment, the human felt a flash of the same fear he'd experienced on BDR 478. Then the Ravaxis did something unprecedented in recorded diplomatic history with his species. He lowered himself to Jack's eye level, a gesture of equality that caused gasps among the assembled dignitaries. Jack Finnegan, Krath'zor rumbled. My clan gives you greeting. Then, to the shock of the entire diplomatic corps, the Ravaxis extended one massive claw, not in threat, but in a remarkably human-like gesture. Jack stared at the offered hand in surprise, then grinned and reached out to shake it. Welcome to the planet of clever monkeys, he said. We've got a lot to learn from each other. As the unlikely pair, galaxy's most dangerous predator and the resource scout who had outsmarted him walked together toward the negotiation chamber, Jack couldn't help but reflect on the strange path that had led him here. Sometimes, being underestimated was the greatest advantage of all. In the years that followed, the phrase pulling a Finnegan entered the diplomatic lexicon, referring to turning a seemingly hopeless position into an advantage through unexpected means. Jack himself eventually became Earth's ambassador to the Ravaxis Dominion, where his unorthodox approach to diplomacy and friendship with Krath'zor, who had risen to become a senior clan leader, helped forge an alliance that would ultimately reshape galactic politics. And on his office wall hung a framed geological survey report from BDR 478, with a handwritten note at the bottom that read, Unexpected discovery on Tuesday. Humans are still the galaxy's apex predator, just not in the way anyone expected. Turned out Tuesdays weren't so bad after all.